Ascot Hills, right? And you did an amazing job hosting us that day. I know myself, I learned so much, as well as just enjoyed the energy that the whole day was. But I do want to give you space to introduce yourself and tell us about Northeast Trees and maybe a few other organizations that you participate in. And really just what you're excited about in relation to this evening's presentations.
Hi everyone. I think a lot we've met before, but if we haven't, my name is Jose Gama Vargas. I go by Gama. I work with Northeast Trees. I've been there for 4 years, but the organization itself, it's a nonprofit. It's been around for about 30 years. And environmental work in whatever way it looks. So we started off by the LA River. So a lot of the pocket parks around the LA River, like Oso Park, in the 90s, were designed and built by us, by Northeast Trees. But we do other stuff too. A big part of our work is design and build, but we also do urban forestry, and that's the part, that's what I'm part of. And urban forestry is basically all the trees in the city, and we do planting mostly. And so we work in communities that lack canopy for various reasons, including racist ones. And so now the city, the state, the people are trying to rectify that. And so we're now focusing, Northeast Trees has focused on that. But now, since there's such a big demand, we're working in places like Watts in South LA, where we plant thousands of trees in the streets. We also have a nursery like in Ascot Hills, and we do work in parks like Ascot Hills as well, and do invasive weed management and put in native plants. And then I'm also part of Coyote Masawali, for example, and their recent organization. They're a little interesting. They just won a lawsuit where they sued the city and a real estate company that irresponsibly permitted and pushed along in the process 42 $2 million homes where Black walnut woodlands, our native trees, exist. And the judge said that they didn't follow proper procedure. And so their project was deemed not permitted in the right way. So yeah, what I look forward to is hearing all of your ideas, and seeing, what you bring to the world, because we need new ideas.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, Gama. The student projects are going to be a plethora of different ideas that are going to be, I believe there are a couple of projects that are specific to Ascot Hills, which I'm really excited for you to be here tonight and see those. But generally speaking, there's a lot of concepts that you'll be able to align, because some of the students applied what we learned from Ascot Hills and the other things we learned in the class to their studio projects, right? They went to a lot of field trips with their other courses. So again, I'm really excited to see how they have applied everything that they learned throughout the course. Without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce group one. And that's going to be Daniel, Jocelyn, and Juan. Feel free to take over. I'm gonna give one of you who needs host access. Who has
I'll be the one that shares my screen.
Awesome. I will go ahead and give you access, Daniel. Let me see. All right, let me know if you have access to share your screen. Awesome.
Sorry. There we go. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. What about now?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So The title of our project is called the Harbor Green Connection. And my group is me, Daniel Lopez, Jocelyn Aguirre, and Juan Leon. And it's basically based in the city of Wilmington, California, also known as the Port of LA. It is part of LA City as well, just unincorporated.
So to start off, this is our design precedent. It's the Transforming Melbourne Motorways. It's in Melbourne, Australia. Their whole design concept was to block out noise with the green wall. And as with the image to the right, you can see their concept, the design concept for innovating to manage traffic noise by cancellation and transformation. And below that, you can see the schematic design of the proposed noise barrier. And their whole objective is to help protect the local residents and drivers from noise and air pollution by producing an ecological buffer. The system is to encourage biodiversity by including native and low maintenance vegetation. And this will also help absorb CO2 and other emissions from vehicles. Next slide. So this is our demographics. As you can see, one of the main demographics that I want to point out is the means for transportation. You can see that the transportation around the area is mostly by car. With our project, we're trying to improve the transportation of bicyclists and motivate more people to walk around the area. Next slide.
So to kind of give context to the site, we have the city boundary of the whole city of LA, and Wilmington is included in that. And so you can see it runs down south to where the port is. And then I also made a refineries map for Wilmington. So it's known as the third largest oil field in the US. And there's about 5 refineries located in the city. And they're color coded right here. So you have the Phillips refinery, you have a Tesoro, Valero, a couple asphalt, and then also as well a little bit oil fuel tanks. And then these are some pictures I took of the site. And then you can also see that there's a lot of soil liquefaction up along the site. So it does make it hard to construct and difficult to propose designs because that soil is susceptible to high earthquakes and movement. And then, so we chose the 110 freeway up along Wilmington, and our site would be just the whole wall. And you can see on the right, this diagram kind of shows that 110 freeway, both lanes. And then on one side of the freeway is a community college, and on the other side is all the residential spaces. So we wanted to focus on this residential area and use this wall to our advantage and see what we can propose. And then we have our street circulation. You can see it's highly car oriented, almost no pedestrians walk along this wall. There's no accessibility or much accessibility to it. And there's only 2 entrances to the college that go under the freeway. And there's a lot of homeless in these tunnels, so it makes it a little bit unsafe to cross through. And then so for our asset mapping, we started to zoom out a bit more and look at a bigger scale. So we have the site that sits on a Figueroa Street. And then we have a golf course actually not too far next to the Harbor Community College. And there's a couple mobile homes up as well. And then across our site, we also have a couple mobile homes, like a gated community. The rest is residential. And then we do have like this corridor that is mostly commercial and industrial. So it brings opportunity for these areas and spaces and businesses to kind of use this site to their advantage and attract more people. And then I made a climate analysis of the site. So our prevailing winds come from the southeast and goes along the site. And then we have the solar pattern. But what I wanted to mostly emphasize is where this pollution comes from and the noise. So our site is this purple, and all this noise comes from this freeway, as well as the pollution, and travels into this community college and as well as to all this residential space. And then down in the lower corner, this would be where one of the refineries is as well. And so that brings even more pollution to the site. And then, so for our narrative, we interviewed multiple people I think it was about like 25 or such residents up along the site. And most of their stories, I made a collage to kind of explain what their thoughts were. So there was a lot of talk about community and violence and how they were hopeful. And there was also a lot of talk about pollution. So you can see the ports in the back, the shipping containers, the stacking of shipping containers. I even had a picture from my own driving experience where I was surrounded by multiple truckers, and you can see them up in this mirror. And there was even warning petroleum pipelines all over the city. And the residents kept talking about how they had those in their backyards and everywhere. So I had added that as well. And then also I wanted to bring in the culture because it is very heavily Latino culture, Hispanic. So there's lots of vendors, there's lots of interaction and culture to the site. So that was kind of the narrative behind that. And then for our landscape intervention design up along the freeway, we wanted to bring in more trees, more greenery, a couple of shade structures, and safer bike lanes, kind of make the street smaller for less vehicle use and kind of make it more inviting for pedestrians. And so through these call outs, you can see how we bring these ideas. So this would be the Figueroa Street, and then kind of extending these bike lanes with a green buffer instead of just having cones or bollards up along the street. And then also areas of seating and rest to kind of propose people to want to walk more through the site. And then a couple of shade structures to block out the sun, and then our green wall to kind of combat that pollution and noise.
So these are our final design interventions, our landscape interventions based on all of our analysis. So we have the road and sidewalk integration, low water planting, green walls, and a shade structure, all located on Figueroa Street.
Yeah, so we wanted to use the ideas of permaculture design principles in our site. So we had the ideas of native planting and having these plants that kind of produce themselves. Like you don't really have to, they're low maintenance, and they kind of create a system for the site to kind of feed off each other and rely on each other, as opposed to kind of creating separation. So that was like our whole force is, how do we make that freeway kind of integrate with the city and the residents and the people? And so this was our design. Thank you.
Awesome. This was an amazing project. I did send something in the chat to you, Gama. I'm not sure if you got it.
I got it.
Okay, perfect. So I can definitely start off. Can I have y'all go back to your demographic breakdown? Awesome. So really great usage of data. I really think you highlighted some really key areas in relation to citizenship, education, household, employment, population. In relation to data, you definitely want to be as specific as possible and highlight the data that is most relevant. I do think that you did that, but I would like to know how you connected employment as a data set to your design or your site analysis.
So for the employment, I had that in my I try to show it in my narrative collage, just by showing kind of all the industrial. So it's a lot of, actually, those are the part I left out. It was a lot of longshoremen that live up along the side, and kind of people that work at the refinery. So there was like split, talking to these people, there was a split decision somewhere in support of these refineries, because that was their employment and their jobs. And then some of these people that didn't work at these jobs were like, no, we don't want them here, like, and such. So that was something I forgot to leave out.
That's a really strong point to highlight. What was that tension, and like what was your takeaway from that tension? I think oftentimes what I was trying to teach you all this semester is sometimes you're playing the role as the stakeholder manager, right? And your design intervention has to speak to sometimes multiple stakeholder groups. So taking in the feedback you got from these sometimes competing interests, how did you then, process that as a landscape architect? And then how did you incorporate those competing interests into your process or design outcome?
So through our design, I realized that creating this buffer between the freeway doesn't really affect those workers who are for the refineries. It doesn't stop them from getting to their jobs. It actually improves their healthy living as well. So I saw the benefit between that in correlation with our design. They can use this space as well after work or such when they get off, if they want to relax and rest. And also with the people who wanted the refineries away, well, that's a really big task. You can't just move the refineries, but there are ways and we can combat it. So that would be through this buffer that's much needed along the 110. And since I'm a resident myself, I saw that opportunity because I drive through there almost all the time. And I realized it was a perfect site for an intervention where it can benefit both parties. It doesn't necessarily give one an advantage over the other.
Nice. What would you say was the challenge in relation to executing a design intervention that was responsive to not only the needs of the immediate community, but also reflective of like the policy windows or the legislative opportunities that existed within the space that you were operating in?
I think one of the hardest restrictions of that was kind of thinking about maintenance for the site. So I know that the city it doesn't have a lot of street sweeping. And when it does, there's a lot of people that kind of just leave their cars in the way anyway. So it doesn't get cleaned up. And so I feel like if anything, maintenance and cost would be one of the biggest for the city because most of their funds go to San Pedro and Harbor City as opposed to going to Wilmington.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Gama. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this project and give the feedback that's on your mind.
Sure. So I got three things, I guess, that the professor asked me to think about: what is strong, what I wanted to see, and some highlights. So I'm going to talk about those three things. But I guess before I kind of specifically answer those questions, I'm just going to like say it now and be like, what do I think of? Like, what are some of the questions that I think of? Um, and what I guess what my approach is. So one of the things is I work with the environment a lot, right? Like, and we live in a city, so it's urban. There's a lot of people, but it's important to think about like the perspective of living things too outside of humans, right? So it's like, how would the trees be? Like, would they be healthy there? Would they be happy living creatures in those mediums, right? I'm not making a critique of this particular thing. It's just like, this is what I ask. What about the birds? What about the ecosystem? All the other living things, the other things that are part of our community that do not pay rent or legislate, but exist with us. Again, I guess the other thing is, how does power exist there, right? Who are the people making the decisions in that one spot? I guess that's the second thing. So those are the two things I guess that I really think about when I think about like, this kind of stuff. Okay, what is strong about this one? I really like that collage. That's really cool. It's powerful. Yeah, I can just talk about the color all day there. I really like the collage. I like the analysis. I'm coming in fresh, so I don't really know what I'm looking at, and I guess that's part of the benefit, right? That's why the professor brought me in here, because as people out there in the world, they're going to be talking to all kinds of people that do not understand where you're coming from, what you're talking about, or what you mean, or why you want the thing you want. So presentation and communication is important. So when I saw the pollution diagram with the pollution going up, the freeway, stuff like that, that was a really powerful visualization. You painted the problem really well in that regard. What else? And therefore your solution seemed suitable for it. I guess what I wanted to see what is well, it may be too much to ask for, right? But when you're including like trees, what trees, you know, native trees, yes, native trees exist. But I mean, I work with them all the time, and you know, there's not a lot of trees that you can plant in the city that are native, specifically because of the spacing requirements, right? So how would you know this? You would, I guess, if you keep working on these projects. So that's a big part of it. Like what trees, and do they fit? What else do I want to see? So in the beginning, the demographics, I saw like 6 or 7 charts. It would have been, I don't know if it was just like limited to the slides, but like if you could just show me each slide individually, because that was like a lot of information at once. Yeah, a lot, you know, and even if you're talking to really smart people, when you're giving a presentation of what you want to happen, like even doctorate level people that love to read and are bookworms, you know, they may not want to see all that information, right? They just want it fast, they want it easy. And the easier you can feed it to people visually, the more effective your idea comes across. Highlights, yeah, I you know, it goes back to what was strong, right? That pollution chart. I really the art here, like the work, how you work with color and how you compose this whole presentation is really nice. So you know, visually, I think it's like a really strong presentation. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I have. Thank you for sharing. Good job.
Thank you for your feedback.
Yep.
Thank you.
We do have some more guests that hopped on, but they didn't have a chance to see this presentation because of some tech issues. So I do want to open it up for a few students to give feedback. What were some glows and grows that you all saw? And I'll pick on a couple of folks unless I have volunteers. All right, let's go to you, Ryan.
That drew my attention was the amount of graphic analysis there is, and that it highlights some of the issues there are, such as the 20% that have no high school education.
Nice.
Although I'm not sure if that is solely counting people above the age of 18.
Okay. So clarify the age demographic better. Awesome. Let's go to Paige. Feel free to write it in the chat page or come off of mute. And then we can go to Linda if you're.
I'm gonna write it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Linda, can you share your thoughts?
I also really like their graphic narrative. I thought the collage was really powerful, and it I focused on like the collage part of my part on the group, and so I think it's really interesting to see their take on the collage and how it goes with their site analysis.
Nice, nice. Well, congratulations, Group 1. you had the exciting task of going first and kicking us off. This was an amazing job. I really just want to give more feedback on your climate analysis on your site. I really appreciated the way that you diagrammed the components of the way the weather impacted your site. I appreciated the way that you also accounted for noise, right? This was a great example of how to identify some of the key components that will impact some of the design constraints, as well as the considerations that you wanted to have in your design to address the issues, needs, and interests of the community. So congratulations, stunning job. Before we go on to the next project, I want to give time to introduce our other guests that have come on. I think we have Adriana, Brianna, and I believe Diamond should be on. And I know we have a couple of professors that may hop on as well. But folks are navigating virtual space and workloads. So we're really grateful for all of our guests that have hopped on with their busy schedules. But Brianna, Adriana, would you all like to introduce yourselves?
Hey everybody, my name is Brianna Scott. Me and Adriana are the policy and research analysts for Growing Greatness Now, policy and urban design consulting, founded by and ran by Ronnell. It's nice to meet everybody. Really excited to hear about everybody's presentations.
Awesome. Yes, Brianna and Adriana are godsends for real. They are graduates of poli-sci and Africana studies. Both, I think, they both had that, one double major, one minor, but both are on that. And Adriana is actually working on getting into grad school for public policy. They currently work for Growing Greatness Now, my policy and urban design consulting firm, and they've been super dynamic, and we're celebrating a lot of legislative wins. But we do a lot of research and data analytics in relation to projects like these. So they are going to be participating in the feedback today. Paige, thank you so much for sharing that in the chat. Feedback from Paige, very detailed and organized information, clear demonstration of research. Awesome, awesome. All right, so we are now going to go to this group 2, and that's Giselle, Ricardo, and Catherine, who will be presenting.
I will.
All right, Giselle. I'm going to go ahead and give you presenter access. Let's see, how does this work? My co-host, yes. So you should be able to share your screen now, Giselle. Let me know if that works.
All right, so I guess I'll just go ahead and start. So we'll start off with, this is our project, the Lopez Urban Farm.
And make sure everyone introduces themselves for our guests. If you can give your name, the year you're in, and your majors.
Perfect. Yeah, so my name is Ricardo Gonzalez, and I am a 3rd year in landscape architecture.
My name is Giselle Nava, and I'm also a 3rd year in landscape architecture.
And my name is Catherine. I'm also a 3rd year in the landscape architecture department.
Oh.
Hold on, where you? No. All right. So then this is our site mapping, so just get an idea of around our location. The site we picked is heavily residential, with Mission Boulevard being the only place where there are businesses, and then everything else in red is residential.
For our presidents, we looked at a few farms. So we have Sowing Seeds for Change, which just highlights a lot of the programs we want to go over. So it has agriculture, composting, and just an overall place for the community to visit and just get education about growing vegetables and their own food.
And then for our next precedent, it was actually one of our field trips, Moonwater Farms. This was a great farm that had a lot of enrichment programs as well as field trips. So it was a really good blueprint of how to turn a small space into a working urban farm. As for the demographics, I looked at who will be using the site. So I looked at the different age groups in Pomona and the population density, as well as occupied housing units, and then the people per household. And then as far as asset mapping, we looked at a lot of different potential partnerships that we could have for our site. So Justice for Youth is a great one to get young volunteers to learn how to farm. And then Lopez Urban Farm is the main site, which is next to our site, that will be helping us with materials. And they also host a night market as well as a farmer's market. And then the poly pantry or other pantries at local churches is a great way to give our produce out for low to no cost. And then for the site context mapping and external forces, I looked at different forces that may impact our site. So one of them is water. So I looked at the sewer lines, and then also the bird migration pathways and the winds. And then also the Ontario airport is not too far, so flights may pass over our site.
Then for our graphic narrative, we just wanted to highlight a few of the programs that would be going on in our design. So the first one is just highlighting people coming in and learning how to grow their own stuff, and just overall visiting the farm and understanding how to gain an experience on growing their own stuff. And then below that, we have just the food pantry and people collecting food from the food pantry. And to the side of that, we have farmers markets, which would just be included with the farm, and like a way for them to sell their produce and garner more customers and stuff like that.
Alrighty, and this is our landscape intervention. At the bottom left, we have our design, which are just, there would be some farming areas, as well as in the center, a huddle space where they could gather with these programs that we'll be hosting and teach the people about farming and the importance of it. And then we just have a render on the right, which shows how the site will be filled. And that'll be it. Thank you for listening.
Awesome job. I really like your landscape intervention. What I would like to see on this side is more of a description of like the functionality of it, because I really like the design, right? But really identifying it as the landscape intervention component, really seeing where the description is of what's happening with the intervention. Can you go to the previous slide? The beach life. So this right here, the graphic narrative, really does, in a way, it communicates a lot of how you intend to use the site and who's impacted by the site. But with your your landscape intervention, it was definitely an opportunity to put more descriptions there. But this part I really, really liked, in particular, the farmers market, because of the opportunity to address economics, right? That is an important component to consider, especially in relation to the region, but also in relation to your site specifically. There are a lot of farmers markets in the LA region. There are many urban farmers who are growing produce in South LA and other parts of the city. And more infrastructure for farmers markets is important. And really building the economy around that is a great opportunity. And so I really appreciate that being highlighted. Can you go to the demographic slide that you had? I really appreciated the geographical information analysis of this data and really looking at how this is represented in relation to your site area. Geographical information, I think, is a great representation of like how data can be seen visually. One, because it lets people know where the issue is happening, especially if you're identifying things like housing or overcrowded housing or population density. These things are not happening in the same way in every part of the city. So it was really great to see how you were able to use geographical information systems to communicate what your target demographic was and how they represented it on your site, as well as different issue areas reflected in your site. I'll go ahead and defer to our guest. I think we just got a new guest come on, but before we have everybody share out, Diamond, if you want to introduce yourself.
Can you say that one more time?
If you can just quickly introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Diamond Haywood. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a part of Growing Greatness Now. I don't know what else. I missed the introductions. I'm sorry. I've been having a problem logging on, so I can't
No,
see
that's
great
totally
presentations that you guys have been working hard on. Okay. Well, it sounds good, everyone. I'm enjoying it so far.
Awesome.
So thank you for having me.
We're having some tech difficulties. I don't think Diamond can see your presentation, but I'm not sure if you want to give some of your thoughts on what you were hearing so far, Diamond.
Not at the moment.
Okay, cool.
I'm kind of in and out. I'm still trying to log into the video portion.
I am.
So I am a little distracted. Okay.
Thank you so much, Diamond, for being here.
For sure.
We'll go to Gama, and then we'll go to Adriana next.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I like that you well, I like that, yeah, like the professor said, there's like a lot of people there, so it's like a very social thing, and then that showed, right? And I think 3 people worked on the collage, so that was actually really nice to kind of see like different perspectives, or I don't know if one person worked on like 3 different ones, or I don't know, but that was cool too, because there's like different perspectives, we see different things in a single space. I guess, yeah, what I wanted to see is how the space is gonna like promote a certain activity. I think if you create a community space, at least this is from my experience, it's like access is a big part of it, and that becomes a big issue, right? Who has the keys to the place, and how convenient is it for people to come in? Like Ascot Hills has a big amphitheater, and nobody needs permission to kind of do something there. Like you could just do ad hoc, right? Like you just go in, and that's it's just because the space is conducive to that. Whereas like I know there's another park called Compton Creek, and that one is gated all the time. And so I mean, yeah, it's behind a gate all the time, and then it's closed right at a certain hour, so then it's inaccessible. So I like how does it maintain that accessibility, I guess is like what I wanted to see. Yeah, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Good job.
Adriana, and then we can go to Brianna.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Adriana. Me and Brianna are actually together, so we're like talking to each other about the presentation. But so we feel like neither one of us like actually know much about the area on hand. So we're just like based on the presentations itself. And we like the idea of a farmer's market. Like maybe it's just, the Compton in us, but we just really love the idea of farmers markets and how they actually can bring the community together. So I feel like that's a really good use of a space, since everybody can be a part, and it's something that, you can either go to or or actually vend at, and like how they can change your life and how they can change the demographic of a city or bring more people to a city, which can ultimately change the graphics of a city. But yeah, we like the information.
Thank you.
Awesome. So how did you all incorporate your favorite reading into this project? What reading in this course stood out to you the most, and how did you incorporate it in the project? That's a question for each of you.
For mine, ooh, sorry about the echo. I always think of the designing for accessibility. I know like one of the critiquers mentioned, and I guess making sure that moving through the space is accessible. And I always reference, I know Moonwater Farms, they were talking about how they tried to make it accessible, and they did have some challenges in terms of their permeable pavers and just like what materials they use. So I guess we tried to keep that in mind to make sure our space is always one that you can easily move throughout whoever you are. And then in terms of accessibility just to the public, it is school district property, but the Lopez Urban Farm is using the land right now, or like they have like a contract together. So it is super accessible to the public. You can just drive on up and you can go and walk through the farm and talk to the farmers and volunteers there. So I guess in all aspects, we try and make it very accessible.
Nice. Can you go to your design intervention and walk us through what's happening on your site?
Yeah, so with those two blocks you see there, those would be shipping containers, and they would be used as storage to hold any type of material required for this farm. And so you essentially just would walk in like there is in the render, and in the first circle will be the farming of any vegetable or fruit. And then after that, you would walk to a huddle space where you could gather, sit around, and get information or ask any questions from the programmers that would be located around this. And then after that would be another set of farming. And then all the way at the end would be some herb farm. So just basically just a bunch of farming where anyone in the community could walk in and learn the skill farming, as well as get some produce for themselves for home, and as well as hold farmers market in this area.
And same question to you, Ricardo. What was your favorite reading and how did you apply it to the project?
One of the favorite readings was the first one, The Site Matters. I got to do the chapter of Figure Ground. So finding this very urban area like Pomona with a lot of industrial and this area being heavily residential, it was interesting to find that there was a lot of closed areas, and just all the neighborhoods around where all the homes were closed up with the gated fence, and just bringing something like a farmer's market or a community farm, an urban farm basically, just helps bring in locals and I guess just connect everyone together in one space and stop the boundaries of what every space is.
Nice. And Giselle, did you get a chance to share on your favorite reading and how you applied it to the project?
I didn't, but okay. I didn't really relate it more to a reading. I related it to the podcast that was a set way of thinking. So when you think about a farm, you think about rows and rows of vegetables and just like one farmer. But so we really tried to steer clear of that through this design. We wanted to create more organic shapes in a way that just kind of steered away from the set idea of what a farm was. We also didn't just specify that it was a farm. We wanted to create a farm as well as a classroom and just a space that could be used in so many different ways. So yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for an amazing project and a job well done with your presentation. The semester has completed for y'all. Congratulations. Let's go ahead and move right along into the next project. That is totally fine, Linda. We'll move forward without Daniel. It'll be you and Joshua presenting today, it seems. And we can talk offline in regards to contributions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'll do the screen share right now.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and give you access, Josh. Gamma, this one's for you. All right, so take it away, Josh.
All right, hi, my name is Joshua Leva, and this is my second year as a landscape architecture major.
And my name is Linda Luna. I'm also a second year in landscape architecture.
And as a start, I just want to go over like the general site analysis of the park, which contributes to like the invasive plants within the park as well. So some of the parks some of the plants I was able to identify in the park were I believe one of them was the eucalyptus globalis, or the generic name would be like the Tasmanian blue gum. And this kind of creates a hazard, especially in dry seasons, because of the bark, and which could be like a fire hazard to some of like the local plants around the area. And also the yellow mustard shrubs, in which they were able to produce some contaminants or some like chemicals out into the atmosphere that gives them an advantage to outcompete some of these native plants up in I think they were mostly inhabited like inside the ridges of the hills. So and since there were like a few abundance of them too, and those sides of the ridges, that it limits like some of those native plants near these invasive plants from growing any further. And some of the presidents too I found like in the park was like two of them involving some of the bioswales, or like the bioretentions that were constructed inside these ridges, where they integrated some of like these native plants and some of the invasive plants. I kind of forgot some of their names, but they were able to contribute together, maybe because of the same use of like water maintenance, or that they were possibly considered as partnering plants, and that they also had their own water reservoir, like their own access or like their own resource to fresh water, because because of their history in well since sorry because since the US kind of gained more of the resources after the Spanish rule, they kind of finited some of the resources in Ascot Hills, in which water was very very minuscule at that time, in which they had to kind of rely on other outside resources to kind of like to build or structure up some infrastructures that kind of unfairly took advantage of like other water resources. But because of Ascot Hills, in which they were able to use some of the existing infrastructures in that park to their advantage to kind of advance the technology of it. Yeah, they were able to advance their water infrastructure, in which not only contain or like conserve fresh water there, but also it also kind of gave like a little educational resource too for any visitors or even residents too living around the area to kind of learn too how to manage some of these plants, or like how they use some of the water resources too to kind of grow their own native plants within the valley. During my research on well, it's not necessarily just Ascot Hills, but I was kind of also in concern with the neighborhood of El Sereno, because based on the overall reviews, I heard that often it's very mellow, but it's usually like a quiet, friendly neighborhood. But some of the challenges, or some of the social constraints that they usually have there are some crimes that involve like assault and robbery, and even including like the practice of like illegal waste disposals, in which I got some of the I found an interview from one of the El Sereno residents named Christian, in which some of these people dump some of these wastes, in which these like these neighborhoods, or like these like very low visible areas, and where people can't see them, so they're free to just dump their waste wherever they want, where people can't see them. There's very low security, and that there's like it's often vacant too. So like most of these spaces are like not often used, so which gives them just an advantage to kind of dispose their own waste, like use those vacant lots as like their own dump. And sorry, let me share Linda's work. Oh, sorry. I had it. What was it? Sorry for the wait.
Take your time, Josh. And both of you should have sharing access just in case you are switching presentations.
Did you want me to share my screen, Josh?
I think I got it. Okay, yeah, I found it. So let me just open the page. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. So one of our biggest stakeholders is the residents of Northeast LA. And so on this board, I really wanted to represent their wants. And so what I did was a day in the life at Northeast Trees. And this organization is a big part of the community of Ascot Hills. And they contribute to things like making the community grow together. And through this research, something I established was that one of their biggest goals is providing for the people. And there was an interview where I saw of 3 nursery interns, And basically what they were saying was that they all wanted green spaces, a tighter knit community, clean air. And this is something that Northeast Trees is making possible for these kind of communities. Can you move to the next slide, Josh?
Yep.
And another stakeholder is the black walnut tree. And not only does the black walnut tree have historic ties with the native Tongva people, but it also has so many benefits to the community. And with the recent chopping down of all of these walnut trees, it really it's really cool to see that developers are taking away this benefit not only to the ecosystem, because the walnut tree provides for creating diverse habitats for animals like squirrels, birds, but it also produces food that is exclusively used by the Tongva people. Can you switch to the next slide, please? So in this whole political battle, I've read so many instances of developers cutting down trees without permits, and even with permits, I feel like it's such a cruel thing to do, because it takes so long for the ecosystem to recover from these trees getting cut down. And so of course a natural reaction would be for the residents of Northeast LA to be upset by these removal of the trees, because by doing this, it's taking away a part of their community, taking away clean air, taking away the right to access these green spaces. And so there was an instance where they're removing 112 trees for, I think it's for a project with NBC, and the community has had a very negative reaction. And so it's just a push and pull between the city of LA, the residents and developers. Okay, Josh, did you want to take it to the intervention?
Yeah, I'll present the intervention. Just open my page really quick. So as our design intervention, well, at first, because since the residents too were angry about these illegal waste disposals, the LA sanitation has had many complaints, but in addition, as much as this is their responsibility, it's not necessarily their entire fault, because as much as they want to help, they're very spread thin in terms of in their workers, and they only have access to these residential areas, or any of these places where they have clear address names. But since most of these illegal waste disposings are taken into private areas, or just vacant lots too that don't have a clear address name, the LA sanitation doesn't really have access to these spaces, which makes it difficult to kind of work with these residents, in which it kind of led the community to kind of take matters in their own hands, to kind of participate in some of the volunteer works to clean some of these vacant lots in these private areas, and even hiring some people to have their trucks to load with these disposables and take them to like a nearby dumpster resource. But as part of our design intervention, what I wanted to focus on to kind of have to develop a gathering space where it's like a multifunctional purpose. So first would be the more of like a compost center in which residents are welcome to participate in some of these lectures or some of these events where they could learn how to manage their waste, or mostly with their green waste, and how they could transition it from just like everyday waste to something that's usable, to something that can use to grow plants, in which I haven't really added it, but they could also have like their little compost garden where they use some of the green waste disposables from the surrounding neighborhood to turn it into compost and use it as their own soil to grow some of the native plants, or like to possibly even regrow some of like the walnut trees. And I even added like a little planting area in the middle to kind of give like a little
you know, when you're like not like really bad hungover, you're just like your head's throbbing, you feel like nauseous. You know that like once you get fluids and food in you.
Somebody may need to go on mute.
Sorry. Well, anyway, just the middle gardening plant form I added in the middle is kind of gave more of like a demonstration of how like some of these compost soils can be used, and how like other plants can partner up with some of these trees, or like even some of the walnut trees, to kind of have like a functioning garden. And the other space too, where all these like tents, or like these little canopies are located, is to kind of have access, or to kind of give like further education to like the residential area, where they could learn some of like some of these outside sources to kind of get like a more of like a broad, like more of like a like to have like an expanding view on like what are the sources that they could help with, like in removing some of these disposables, or like reducing some of these wastes in like their neighborhood. Like for example, there's this one resource I found too online, where it's they use they mostly repair old furniture to they people are welcome to send over their old furniture for repairs, so that they could bring it back with them, and to they could either like keep them, or they could even sell them off in like a garage sales, because some woods are acceptable to use as compost, but usually woods that are already painted, or if they're stained, or they're not clean, or like if they're already been treated, then it's very hazardous to use in those to use as one of the compost ingredients, and it could create some kind of contaminants that could harm some of these plants and some of these trees, or like even the soil itself. But not just that, but also maybe job opportunities too, that they could get out of Los Angeles. And but overall, yeah, that's our overall landscape intervention, to kind of create a gathering space with a multifunctional one that's compost center, and the other one that serves more as like a little bit of a job fair, but also kind of giving like a little showcase for like outside services to help them with some of their needs in these residential areas.
Nice. Awesome job. Awesome job. I really appreciate this presentation. One, because I really think it identified some of what Gama brought up earlier in regards to like identifying the native species. In addition to that, I really appreciated the way you communicated the day in the life of the stakeholder in Northeast Trees. One, the work that they do is so important. I know I've had a couple of opportunities to visit the site once with you all, but both times were just such a beautiful experience. And I'm just really grateful for the service of Northeast Trees and the work that they do and the service that they provide in education, as well as a way for folks to relate to the natural environment in a way that we take for granted, for sure. Some of the things that I appreciated about your project is the way you identify the flora and fauna as a stakeholder. You identified the black walnut tree as a stakeholder. And then also you called out the meaning these type of, the black walnut tree and other types of food sources are relevant to the Tonga, right? The Native American community that is native to the Ascot Hills area. And I thought that was an important thing to highlight. One thing I did want to ask about was the design precedent. I might have missed that, but did you all identify design precedent? And if you can pull that up for me.
Yeah, I can pull it up. But yeah, this was my chosen design president in Ascot Hills with the water reservoir in response to well, because during the Spanish rule, or like during Mexico's occupation of California, they did have a water infrastructure already built in Ascot Hills. But ever since the U.S. Gained control of California, they kind of finite its resources, in which they resorted in some infrastructures that kind of unfairly like shared, or like even took like other outside resources, like maybe sometimes without permission, that this park, with the existing infrastructure, that they used it to advantage to advance it, while also designing some of these bioretentions, like these bioswales in these ridges of the hills, to rely on like stormwater, so that it could be collected, maybe through these bioswales, or like even in the valley too, where it could be treated, and to kind of transition it to fresh, clean water, where they can they can conserve it, or they can use some that remaining water source to grow like their own native garden in the park. So it's like more reliable on their own resources than having to rely on like outside resources.
Nice. So if I understand it correctly, your design precedent is reflective of reviving infrastructure or previous usage of site, or connecting it to historic riparian waterways to the Ascot area. So you're saying that used to exist there, and it's more of rehabilitating the site to reactivate this role of being a site for what your design intervention is talking about, especially in relation to the bioswales.
Yeah, they don't let most of their resources too in the park go to waste, and they don't they don't tend to like find another space to like build another water infrastructure and to collect stormwater. So yeah, and in terms like the overall president, yeah, it's more about revival of like these ancient infrastructures, while also using like their resources in the park as an advantage to just rely on their own, instead of just like having to struggle to share, or even like find other sources outside of Ascot Hills, or even outside El Sereno.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'll come back to y'all, but before I continue, I'll hand it over to our guest, Gama. This is for you. I'll go ahead and give it to you, and then we'll go to Brianna, Adriana, and then Diamond, if you want to share. I know that tech difficulties are really horrible today. Forgive me for that, but if you are still on, feel free to share your thoughts on what you've heard. Gama?
Cool. Hi. Yeah. Thanks for presenting. Of course, I am biased and in favor, but that's the case in life too, right? I love the Black Walnut. I love that park. So, where do I start? Thank you. Yes, thank you for looking into the constituents that are also not human, which include the Black Walnut. And also analyzing the power dynamics. Developers are the ones that are making a lot of the decisions there, but it is through organizing that the park is what it is. I have a question about that diagram or the collage there. Was that made in Microsoft Paint? Just
Or
or
like
or did you?
paint.net. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, cool. That's skill. I appreciate that. And I guess yeah, you did look into the environment, right? And so there was like a really close study of the plants and of some of the trees. I think the end diagram showed sycamores, right? Or were those sycamore trees?
I have most the two I'm mostly familiar with the yellow mustard and the Eucalyptus globulus.
Correct. Yes, those are the invasive, but it's like I'm looking at the your what do you call what you are going to create? The final
Your
slide, the one with
intervention?
the
I mean,
intervention. Yeah. Yeah, those are sycamore trees, right? Or what we just say?
Honestly, I wasn't really entirely sure. I was mostly searching up just California native trees in Google and kind of like copying the image out of it to present it to my to my intervention.
Cool. Well, let me get into this. So that I think it is a California sycamore. And I think this is just for everyone here listening. And it would work in Ascot Hills, but in like what part? Like what part of the park is this going to? So sycamores are riparian trees. They like to be around water, running water. And this is very important for landscape architects. One of the biggest things that I hear, I'm not a landscape architect myself, but I do work with people who work with landscape architects. I also work with them. Knowing your trees is very important. What you show on paper is not necessarily what the creature is going to look like, you know, all year or even at all. So one of the practices that you must practice is right tree, right tree, right place. And so, yeah, the question is, where is this going to go? So could it be a black walnut? Could it be, these are all native trees, right? And everyone wants natives now. So could it be a sycamore? Could it be a coastline oak? Could it be a black walnut? Is it a toyon? Yeah, and right tree, right place. So just wanted to point that. And then diversity, biodiversity. So there's all kinds of plagues, just like they're coming after us, they're coming after the trees. So one of the things that as arborists we practice is diversify your trees. Because if there's a bug that a Polyphycus shot-hole borer, psyllid, whatever, fungus, if you have the same tree, they're all going to go away, and you don't want to lose them all at once because that's going to be bad for everyone. Okay, now I really like the social part of it. I really appreciated you like looking into the social part, but including the nursery, the interns, they're amazing, they're awesome, they are from the community. I'm glad you quoted them. But I do have one thing, just one thing. I want to make another comment on community. Christian is one person in the community, and this is just in general, right? Like, what is community? I feel like it's like love, like the word love or the word hate. It's like it could be anything for everyone, right? And so, well, I think one of the biggest mistakes in community outreach that I think the majority of people do is they tend to think community is one group of people, usually the most vocal one, or at least the one that you actually go out and talk to. And then that's the community's, like, oh, that's what the community thinks. Um, it's more expensive to actually know what they really think. And at the end of the day, I don't think you'll ever know. So I think I don't agree with what Christian said. But that's because I'm also from the community. We're different, right? And so we have different perspectives. And I'm not saying that, like that's not what the community thinks. I just kind of want to talk about like who gets to say what the community is. And that's usually the person that has the time to say it, to go to your meetings. If you have 9 a.m. meetings, the weekday, you're going to get a particular person rather than someone in the evening, with translation. Just kind of wanted to comment on that. But yeah, thank you so much for doing that on Ascot Hills.
Yes.
Good job. Good job.
I really appreciate you uplifting the right tree, right place framing, Gamma. And that's some really great insight for you all as students when you're developing your design interventions. As you build your concepts, if you are using visuals, you definitely want to make them relevant to your site, right? So if you're developing a concept of native trees, for example, you can learn from the feedback Gamma gave today and make sure that you're being mindful of diversity, introducing layering, right? We've talked about some of these things in regards to the course, but those visuals should be intentional, right? If you're going to incorporate visuals, have the type of flower you will introduce on your site. Make sure your visual is reflective of that. And this goes back to putting the descriptions. So one thing you did well in this project was you did identify the native species you did want to introduce, but in your landscape intervention, it was an opportunity to make those visuals reflect that, right? And even with the sycamore tree, as Gamma pointed out, great tree, right? But an opportunity would have been, in your example, to introduce the walnut tree, right? Because that was the tree that you all had spoke to. And then other kind of, other food sources that you mentioned in your diagram. So again, that's some great feedback there, making sure that your visuals are intentional and reflective of the proposed interventions, especially when it comes to the flora that you're introducing on your site. All right, Brianna, Adriana.
I really liked the presentation. It was very interesting. I haven't, in like my studies, like I haven't really come across anything that spoke specifically to like the trees or like the greenery or the things like that around cities. So that was very interesting to learn about. Yeah, I really liked the presentation. It was very interesting. It was very eye-catching for like, especially for someone who has like no clue of what's even like the basis of this, you know what I mean? So it was very interesting. You guys sounded very knowledgeable, like you really knew what you were talking about. So I really appreciated that too. Yeah, I really liked it. I don't really know.
In
what else to
regards to your thoughts, Brianna, like let's say as a resident, how would you receive hearing about the intervention? Do you think that it was reflective of like someone who's living in a community's needs? And if so, how? And then like, what would you say could have been enhanced to make it more, I guess, relatable and connected for you being like a resident who, let's say, is hearing this as an opportunity to introduce in your community?
I'd say that I feel like it was pretty representative of the community, I guess to say. I like how they touched on how from the government's perspective about this, you know what I mean? I liked that perspective of it as well, because that is another truth about government. A way that it could be better reflected for me, I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah, I kind of feel like a fish out of water in this kind of thing. So in this specific like topic of areas, I'm not really sure necessarily how to critique it more so. But I liked what the previous feedback was about making sure that you have like different trees and different in all throughout your city, like that made a lot of sense. I like that feedback. It was really good. I would say that as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Brianna. Diamond, I'm not sure if you want to jump in and share your thoughts.
I guess kind of just piggybacking. I do think that all of this information is just like really cool to like hear, and it sounds like everyone has done a really good job of like doing their research. The whole fish out of water thing. I'm marriage and family therapist, so I deal with like relationships and things like that. So this is all really cool to hear. About like the little things that we kind of like we're walking around in our communities and we're not thinking about. A lot of these things. So I do think that it's just really interesting. But I think also it sounds like, I don't know, but it sounds relatable based off of just like hearing the information that was gathered. I can't really, I haven't taken the course, so I don't know exactly, the objectives and the goals that you guys have for, the situation, but I think it's really interesting, and I do. Sorry. No, it's good. I'm loving all of this. It's like opening up my eyes to different things, and it's like walking around in my community, like looking and noticing things that I never really, pay attention to. All of this stuff is just really important. And you guys are doing a really good job of just like providing me with information that I was not aware of.
Yes, that's the big thing. I think a lot of times the folks that are most impacted by these, lived experiences, because everyone's impacted by the built environment. And, the amount of flora and fauna we have, it really impacts our air quality and the way we can breathe and how clean the air can be. If we don't have any parks and natural landscapes, that means that we probably don't have any green space in our community, and that impacts mental health. And there's a lot of studies that talk about that connection as well. So I really appreciate y'all insight and your fresh eyes on this content in regards to processing it with the foreignness that it brings, right? But then connecting it to like, wow, this is connected to how I walk through my community. Oh, that's insight that I never thought of, right? So no, that's some really great feedback. I'm gonna pose a question to you both, like I did the last group. What was the reading that you feel was most like you took the most from in the course so far, and how did you apply it to your final project?
Well, for me, it would have to be the landscape architect prototype, which they were focusing on projects or just like the overall landscape that was already existing in somewhere, I think it was somewhere in the East. But in one of the reading or like in one of the articles, they were kind of focusing on like some of the natural elements or some like the anthropogenic elements that were already existing that kind of impacted the native inhabitants, or like that was kind of or the native inhabitants, or that was one that kind of attracted like more like outside tourists, but like in a way it was trying to kind of like revive some of the native or like the existing elements that made the village unique in its own character, to give like to revive back its main like just its overall unique characteristics of the village. And like during my work, and I was mostly focusing on like some of the some of the challenges that El Sereno would have was with crime and some like illegal waste disposal. And I was looking into like some examples or like some of their like outside resource on how some of these people or like how some of these organizations can deal with these kind of issues, especially when it comes to um, dealing with like illegal waste, like some of the basic practices that some people can do in their homes, or even um, setting up setting like a center too, where people can have access to learning how to manage their waste, and like how um, yeah, because what I feel with the LA sanitation, like probably some things that they were missing is just like how to kind of like um just overall how to kind of like balance with like recyclable uses, or like even like organic waste, that some of them can be like reused for like to make it something like a usable energy or something like that, to like it's just like something that might be reused again, instead of having just like dispose of it and just leave it out in the open.
Right. No, I appreciate you for giving that insight, Joshua, and connecting it to the landscape architecture prototype. But that was one of my favorite books as well. Let's go to you, Linda.
I think the resource that I thought was the most important to me was the permaculture design principles. I feel like we use that not only in our site analysis, but we also used it in our intervention. I think not only the permaculture design principles, but also the field trips we were taking, like the field trip to Moonwater Farms with Kathleen. I know she talked about how they don't use fertilizer at all there. They just do composting. So she also said that she had to take classes to learn how to do that. So I think going back to Northeast Trees, it's important that they bring their information and knowledge and educate the youth and just the community.
Awesome. Well, job well done to the both of you. Definitely looking forward to continuing this conversation and the work that y'all have done so far this semester. Because again, it means something to a lot of folks. And I hope you all are connecting with Gamma as well. I would love for Gamma to get a copy of your presentation and really leverage it as a Northeast Tree sees fit. But yeah, definitely make sure you take advantage of the opportunity to network with any of the stakeholders you thought were important or relevant to just your growth and building your network and relationships while you continue to grow in this work. And visit Ascot Hills. It was such a great experience, and we only touched the tip of the iceberg in relation to what Ascot Hills has to offer and the amazing programs and services Northeast Trees has. So with that, I'm gonna let us break for a quick break. We'll come back at 7:45 and then we'll bring it on home with Naui and Hermelo, and then we'll be done for the day. Presentations have been so amazing so far. Again, this is my commitment and being responsive to the feedback y'all gave as far as giving a break. I apologize for neglecting that opportunity throughout the semester, but I'll never do it again, especially since you all brought that to my attention. So let's go ahead and take that break, and we'll be back at 7:45. All right, go ahead and give me a thumbs up when you're back with us. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up when you are back with us. Thumbs up when you are back. I see Yama's back, Joshua's back. I see a few Brian's back. Okay, we have a few folks back. We'll wait one more minute. Nawi and Hamelo, feel free to get ready. Who will be presenting?
Presenting as in speaking or
Your screen, so I can give you host access.
I will share my screen.
Hamelo, okay, cool. I'll give y'all both just in case.
Yeah, just give me a second.
So you have it, Hamelo.
Can you allow me to share my screen?
Yes.
Oh. All right. Hello, everybody. Hello, professor and peers and guest speakers, whatever is here today. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Ramiro Mejia. I'm a third year, and my partner is Nawi. Nawi, do you want to present yourself?
Yeah, hello everybody. My nname is Nawiolin Tonatio Munoz. I am a fourth year student, but a third year in the BSLA program. And I am happy to begin our presentation with the Olive Ridge, what do you call it, resort located in Pomona. So a little bit about the zoning of Olive Ridge. We were able to find that the areas that surround our site boundary, which is lined in red, are comprised of industrial and economic zones with also a lot of residential areas located near a freeway. And historically, we could all say that a lot of low-income communities, such as Pomona, are located in environmentally disadvantaged areas where environmental conditions are harsher, and climate hazards are more of a commonality. And could you go to the next slide? So in Olive Ridge, some of the demographics that compose Olive Ridge and Pomona include 32% Hispanic, 29% white Hispanic, 10% white, 10% Asian, 5% Black, 2% Indigenous, and 1.3% multiracial, meaning that around 3/4 of the population is comprised of minority groups. And a little bit about like the climate of Pomona. So Pomona gets a annual precipitation rate of 16 inches of rain per year, which is considered pretty moderate in terms of the amount of water the region gets. But in terms of temperature, the annual averages of Pomona's temperatures range anywhere from 74 to 78%, meaning that it's a fairly hot region with summer temperatures being able to exceed over 100 degrees in weather. So and a little bit about the wind too is that it's there's a 5.7% mile per hour wind speed average, with 5.7 being the highest and 4.4 not percent, but miles per hour being the lowest speed that the wind goes on average. So one thing that we were able to conclude with from our site analysis is that Pomona is subject to a variety of different constraints and different environmental conditions that could impact people's ability to live comfortably. Not to mention the fact that our site boundary, which was lined in red on the last slide, is located right next to a freeway. So not only is the heat a primary concern of our design, but also the noise pollution that's coming from the freeway and the air pollution that's coming in from the freeway and the streets. And we came up with a design to solve some of these problems. And could you switch to the next slide?
Yeah, thank you, Nawi. I can explain the next. This is our design proposal for Olive Ridge Resort. As we see right here, this design is a permacultural, it's an intervention landscape, because we noticed that this complex unit has a lot of problems. It's been a while in this in the area of Pomona. It's not very new, and it has maybe years ago. We didn't have any, or the state of California didn't have any problems with the water, neither pollution. But today it's becoming a little bit serious. So by visiting the site, we caught a lot of problems. And yes, it is. It seems to me that definitely the designers, they thought about it, but again, because the site is not very fresh, the entire design, the majority of the trees and bushes definitely takes very little water. But the problem is that they have almost the entire area, they have turf. And turf is one of the main problems today, because turf needs a lot of water, and at least 3 or 4 of it. Nowadays, I think only 3 days per week, but maybe several years ago, you just in order to keep the lawn green and beautiful, you have to water at least 4 or 5 times, per week. And this is the problems that we discover as we walk through. And the idea is to completely, if it's possible, remove a lot of trees, because they definitely need water to look green and happy. So we have the succulents. That's one of the options, the first options that we select. And succulents that covers all this area. And then we have a Palo Verde, because Palo Verde, it takes very little water. It doesn't require a lot like any other trees. And also at these areas right here, just, I don't know, we thought that maybe this corner right here and at the front, which is Valley Boulevard, would be nice to design, or to design right there, or integrate Quercus agrifolia. And the other problem that we discovered is, and this is considered to be a permaculture design, because this is this entire area is not a wall, is a driveway that people uses when they go out or whatever it is what they do, come back home from whatever activities what they do during the day, and they park this area right here. And the problem with this, it's beautiful. The problem is that it's all rigid concrete, and when it rains, the water is just goes this point right here, and this point right here is the sewer, and the water just goes right here directly. And if it would be okay if everything is clean. The problem is that all this area, it has a lot of trash, and which is bad for our environment. So we decided that this area should be replaced to a permeable driveway. The same problem we have with the pathways. These areas right here are the pathways, and the buildings are all these. And the pathways, of course, are used for people who live in early ridge to get into their units or their apartments. The same way, the same idea we thought that we should do with this, to also permeable pathway is probably one of the options, because that would prevent the water to go directly to the sewer, and then eventually this water has to go somewhere to the ocean. And again, the problem is the pollution. And then we have the last choice is a native plants, which is this area right here. Why native plants and why succulents? Well, according to what we learned in this course and in my other classes, is that they need very little water. They also are free of diseases, and especially native plants. If they grow and they live in the state of California, they are completely almost free of diseases. They don't really need fertilize. They don't need much input, output, and everything is safe. Not much pollution, nothing to worry about it. So that's what we thought that's the best choice to do. And in the next slides, we have some examples of plants that probably would be one of the options, native plants and some succulents. So now could you talk a little bit more about those plants?
Yes, so one thing about Pomona is that Pomona is primarily a coastal sage scrub plant community. And a lot of these plant species are either from that community or from the chaparral plant community, which is similar, but a little bit different in the sense that chaparral areas tend to be a little bit more arid. But both of these plant communities, one thing they have in common is that they are comprised of plants that have higher drought tolerance. And some of the proposed plants that we wanted to have on our site included Quercus agrifolia, the Coast Live Oak and Parkinsonia aculata, which Hermilo had mentioned was Palo Verde. Those are two trees that we wanted to use on our site, not just for the fact that they're both very good at shading and retaining water in the soil, but they also add like a pretty good aesthetic element to the space. And our secondary goal was also to create an extension of the pre-existing ecosystem, and through that we decided to also incorporate various other shrubs, including the Aragonia fasciculatum, which is California buckwheat, Artemisia californica, Salvia leucantha, which is not native to California, but it's a very good drought-tolerant alternative, and it's also good for bringing in pollinators, which will also bring about the presence of different wildlife in the region, and Hespero yucca whippley, which I will get a little bit into the next slide, because there's a better illustration that demonstrates the types of gardens that we'll be using. So I had mentioned that it's kind of a mix between, our palette is kind of a mix between coastal sage scrub and chaparral plant communities. And on the left, you could see that that's represented in the sense that we intend to create flower gardens that will bring about the presence of pollinators. And one thing that was pretty prevalent in our space was that there's a pretty big hardscape to greenscape ratio. And the recommended ratio is usually around 3 to 7. But as you were able to see on our site plan, that recommended ratio was clearly not met with, buildings and these long interconnected pathways being the primary ways that the hardscape in the area contributes to the urban heat island effect, which already exacerbates the amount of heat that the region of Pomona gets. So one thing we intended to do was to allow permeable paving to be built on the site so that water can penetrate through the soil, not through the pavement into the soil, and be retained by the pavement. But mulch was also another option that would have served to retain the water in a much better manner. And I had already mentioned that on the left side was coastal sage scrub, like gardening example, but on the other side we have more of like a desert garden, which you can kind of see Opuntia being represented, which is California prickly pear cactus, as well as barrel cactus, some ocotillo and agaves. And these plants were intended to create like a very hardy, drought-tolerant landscape, so that there's not a lot of water usage in the space, and they're very low maintenance. So the need for pesticides or anything of that sort would be kept to a minimum. And the good thing about our planting selection is that the native plants and trees will not only contribute to improving the air quality and carbon sequestration, but they'll also provide a lot of much needed shading, as well as add a visual aesthetic to it and a olfactory element. So yeah, that is what we have. And was there anything else you wanted to add, Hermilo?
Before what I say, that's all what we have. Thank you. Definitely the personal landscape is, definitely it is this part up here, because we definitely trying to control all the water that can stays in the soil rather than let it go somewhere else. We do all this to prevent pollution and preserve ecology. And also one of the books the book that we use is the book, The Prototype Landscape Architect. I can't really see this. And I wrote it down because I really wanted to emphasize this. And the part that I think that we consider that it's important in our site is the part of the book says that the emphasis on the site elements or components makes the landscape an important medium that denies the homogeneity of the environment and also inspires culture and imagination. And I think that this is one of the examples in the collage, because on the other one, on the right hand, we have plants that definitely they come from the desert, and on the left hand, we have native plants. So those are ideas that definitely the book emphasizes, and I think that's one of the this is one of the books that we like, and I really wanted to mention that. So in the next slide, I just have, just thank you and enjoy my little cellular counter that's it's not native from California, but it's beautiful. So, and also takes a little water.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for an amazing presentation. I really appreciated the way you laid out your site map in relation to how it operated. I really appreciated the permeable pavement. I know in one of the readings, you all were assigned in relation to the infrastructure in LA. Permeable pavement was a big opportunity described in that reading. It's something that I wrote, and I'm really passionate about the permeable pavement component and replacing, current infrastructure with permeable pavement opportunities. And so I really appreciated the way that you illustrated that in relation to your site. I did want to ask about your design precedent, and then also your demographic analysis, right? So the different stakeholders that are impacted by your site.
Well, as I mentioned before, this is the area or the part of the design that we have the precedent landscape. I think that the ideas are great, and I hope that this can be change even more, or become more popular, more common, because nowadays we have a lot of problems with water issues in the state of California. So yeah, I think this is one of the main part of the precedent. And the demographic, well, we now we mentioned the different group of people and racial people who live in Pomona, but you can see right here that we missed that information. So I think we fell in that case.
Well, with that in mind, who do you think is your target demographic? And how do you who's your target demographic that you hope to benefit from the site? And then what is another stakeholder that isn't your target demographic that's impacted by the site? And both of you can answer that question, and then I'll hand it over to Gama, and then we'll go to Brianna and Adriana.
First of all, the stakeholders, the neighbors, the people who live in the Olive Ridge, and the owners, of course, and then all the people who already the industrial and all those would be, well, not really the industrial, but they are part of it, because they live near, or they are near here, and whatever changes come from, even from the county, we all have to deal with that. But the ones that are more affected are the people who live mostly are renters, so they are the stakeholders and the owners who own the entire site.
Awesome. Thank you, Hermelo. What about you, Naui? What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, so as Hermilo had previously mentioned, renters and owners are like our primary stakeholders that we intend to benefit through our design. And yeah, one way we intended, and well, yeah, one way that we intended in doing that was by incorporating green space in a way that, you know, all that underutilized space within the site, because I don't know if you were able to see some of the site photographs on the second slide, but all the green space that there actually was, it wasn't very properly utilized. It would either just be dirt patches or just a little bit of grass. There's not a lot of shading because there's only pine trees in the area. So one way that we intended to benefit our target demographic in the area was by it could just be as simple as planting, because you know, planting native species can provide a variety of benefits when it comes to water usage. Considering that we live in a drought, it could provide shading benefits and cooling benefits, as well as you know, benefits relating to temperature regulation, and as well as, you know, provide like a visual aesthetic to the place that, you know, a lot of people in low income communities don't really get to see or experience for themselves.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Naui. Gama, I'm gonna hand it over to you for your feedback.
Sure. Thank you all for presenting. I think this is kind of like a project I can really relate to. This feels like my everyday life, which is basically putting trees in very urban environment, mostly residential. I do a lot of public housing. Let me see, where do I start? Well, yeah, I guess thank you for using scientific names, Latin names, to talk about the species. I think you're all, you know, you're really knowledgeable on your species, and I'm really impressed about, you know, your species selection, the use of the scientific name, the photos. I think, but again, like, you know, be careful, or not be careful. Yeah, be mindful. You are using photos of a tree that looks beautiful, right? Now, this does not mean that that's what it's going to look like in the day to day. And so you're setting expectations, and just be mindful, right? Because then people are like, oh, that's what it's going to look like. And then you build it, and then it's like, oh, shoot, like it does not look like that. What's wrong? So just be mindful of that. Another note, Parkinsonia aculeata have thorns. So I know, how would you know this? But I'm giving you let you know now. You get the cultivar that's called Desert Museum. That one's a thornless Parkinsonia aculeata. So all the residents are not going to get poked around, right, by this thorny tree. The one that's just Parkinsonia aculeata has thorns. Yes, Ergonomium fasciculatum. Yes, I actually recommend that one over the succulents. I know folks like succulents, but you know, the it's called California buckwheat. That one is more like for wildlife. If you go back to the diagram, or the showing of where the trees are going to go, can you go back? Yeah. So another thing is, well, actually, let's stay there. So those big trees, those are Canary Island pines. They're really big. And actually, I'm really surprised that they're so close to the building. They actually don't do a lot of root damage. I think just generally we are asked to plant within 15 feet of the home, because what tends to happen is trees uproot the foundations of structures, and that creates a lot of problems. I think that I think the benefits of trees outweigh that, but again, we live in a city where we're sharing a lot of space with other things. So I'm just like really impressed that those big trees are there. Now they don't have like umbrella canopies, they kind of go up. So they cast longer shadows like, during the fall and winter, but during the summer, they just kind of, shade straight down. If you go up to the next one, the next slide. No, go back where you put the Corcus agrifolia. Yeah, that one. That's nope. What do you call that? Yes, succulent palo verde pathway. A little too far. I just want to talk about the lighting. So when you put in, like, I see what your approach is, which is to conserve water and reduce maintenance, which all landscapers love, by the way. And that's kind of like how we design our Northeast trees. We kind of like no one's going to take care of this. So we put in stuff that'll last or will not need any maintenance. The only thing though is like, since you chose drought tolerant species like the coast live oak, succulent, palo verde, just be mindful that when you put it on the north side, it's probably going to get shaded a lot. So, and then they like a lot of sun. And so when you choose species that love sun and you put them under the shade, they don't look good. So you may need to kind of like lower the tier of drought tolerance, like something that's a little drought tolerant, but not too much, like shade, or something that'll poke its head out behind the buildings, right? And the Parkinsonias don't. Let's see, what do I, yeah, so yeah, I think, I don't know, that's how I pushed it. I think I touched on what strong points you made, which includes like knowing your species and using scientific names. And then what I wanted to see, I guess this is like, I as an arborist, I want like the plants to be good and do well. So I kind of told you about like the north facing, don't put them on the north side, and choose the right species, right? Choose the desert museum as opposed to just like the straight up palo verde. But thank you, good job. Oh, one more thing, what I wanted to see. I think like look into the parkways, like if you do like a residential, especially a public housing with high density, I don't know how much space you're gonna find inside, but do look into like the public right of ways, like the sidewalks, like, and explore like concrete cuts, for example, right? Like I don't know, I'm kind of bothered by things where it's like the whole world disappears and it's just like your project or the private property that you're working on, right? Like to the person living there, their life is beyond that, right? And so it's like, how do you expand these drought tolerant trees outside of that? And the way we do it is we look at the sidewalks, and you can get permits for that and everything. Include that into your project and charge your client. Like you can get concrete cuts, fit in a tree there, right? And that'll help out with more than just that parcel that you got. So thank you, Aaron. Good job.
Thank you.
Amazing feedback, Emma. I really appreciate what you stated in relation to the types of trees and being mindful of whether they're perennial or if they bloom year round. And that's really important, I think, as far as like an opportunity in y'all projects in the future, maybe diagramming the different ways that a plant looks like throughout the year, right? Especially if it's a perennial versus something that blooms year round. So that's definitely something to think about. One thing I did want to mention is I appreciated the examples you provided. You gave like 2 examples of how the site could be used in the different layering concepts in relation to your design intervention. So this made me think about a different question. So I want you and Nawi and Hermelo to answer which one of our guest speakers or site visits inspired your presentation the most, and what was your key takeaway from that experience?
I guess I can go first. I would say, one of the places that, really impacted my side of the contributions of the design would have been like, our trip to Ascot Hills. There's a lot of talk about like one thing that really did catch my attention was like the walnut trees. And it was mentioned that the walnut trees were not seeding and sprouting properly because what do you call that? The hot months were a lot longer. And there was mention that the seeds degrade into the soil because they dropped a little bit too early and not many of them were able to sprout. So, designing in response to increasing temperatures was one of my key takeaways from the thing, which is why we try to incorporate, a lot of, like green spaces that properly utilize water as well as, shady areas with larger trees because one of like our primary concerns was water conservation, which is also kind of like I kind of was a little bit inspired by the LA infrastructure reading that you had us read in regards to like the Zangha systems and how it was pretty much like a infrastructure where water was readily available to everyone, and I kind of wanted to make it a way where water is kind of readily available to plant life, since Hermilo has mentioned that a lot of that water does get wasted and turns into storm runoff and goes into the drains. So yeah.
Awesome. Good takeaways, good connection. Hermilo?
Yes, I agree with Nawi. We didn't discuss that we had to choose Ascot Park. But yeah, Ascot Park is one of my favorites too, that one of my field trips. Because when I got right there, it has only hills, doesn't have much, no valley. Well, it's a little, the topography right there is a little bit different, very unusual for me, but it doesn't have enough trees. And I thought, if I become in charge of this park, I would do this. I would go on top of the mountain, and I don't know how I'm going to climb right there with a tractor, but I would maybe make a flat right there, maybe make a big hole. And when it's raining, try to catch the water and create a biosystem right there, because bioswale place is what we need. And then slowly the water might go down to down the hill. And then if we plant more trees around on the hill, that water that is collected right on the summit slowly will reach the soil and the plants that are below. I just don't know why. When I saw the hills and the mountains, I thought this is one of the projects that I would like to do, but in real life, bringing a lot of plants from from San Diego. So in the mountains in San Diego has a lot of plants that are growing, and especially the fasciculatum, the Eriogonum fasciculatum, those, and also the Artemisia californica, Quercus agrifolia. Also, they have, I see several in Alpine and San Diego. I mean Alpine, which is toward the east of San Diego, and of course the yucca. But and they would do well because they don't need, they native from this region. And if we supply just a little bit of water, I'm sure we can improve the hills in Ascot Park. So and also the water is there. So I think if we can take advantage of the water,
right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And as you can see, Gama, Ascot Hills not only was reflected in projects, but also just overall influence and impact on the takeaways from visiting Ascot Hills. Let's go to Adriana, and then bring it on home with Diamond's feedback.
So we like the presentation a lot. We definitely know of like the benefits of trees and different landscape changes that changes that seem small but make such a big impact, I mean, not easy like in an easy way to do, but just, the impact that it can have on a community. So we liked it a lot.
Awesome. And Diamond?
It was really good. I like, the attention that was put into like the, taking consideration the temperatures and picking certain, plants or, plant life that is going to be, low maintenance and easy for, the upkeep. I really like, just kind of like putting it in certain areas where you don't get that kind of stuff. Just living in Compton and I was working in Santa Monica, and it literally is like a whole different world when I got back, to my neighborhood. And I think, like Ronnell said before, the benefits of like the mental health benefits. Like, I tell my clients all the time, you want to get grounded, you got to get into nature, and it's very important to have that stuff, accessible for, people that, don't have it already. But also you guys are just really like, you guys are answering all the questions and getting good feedback and very knowledgeable about, your projects, and you guys came ready, for, to educate us, people that, don't do this for a living. And I'm thankful. I'm glad you guys, opened it up so that I could, I'm down, I just want to read and, learn about some of this stuff that, I've, you guys have brought in your presentations. But I'm really like a recycler, and, so whatever is good for our environment, and then the mental health aspect of just having nature to, connect with, because we need that connection to nature. So you guys did a really awesome job, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, again, congratulations to Milo and Naui, and to everyone that did their presentations today. I want to thank our guest for joining us today. We did have some other folks that were supposed to be on, but as you all can imagine, folks' schedules are crazy. But for the guests that did make time to join us this evening, we are forever grateful. I am forever grateful. Gama, I just thank you so much for your contribution to our learning this semester, the work you're doing with Northeast Trees, and the way that you just show up for community. I've collaborated with you in a few spaces, and every space I've experienced you in, it's just such an impactful experience for me, just witnessing your leadership. So thank you so much. And to my Growing Greatness Now team, I really appreciate y'all for spending time with my students this evening and taking time out of y'all schedules to spend almost 3 hours with us. Your insight was very, very just great, right? You all were being very modest with your contribution as far as expertise, but I'll say by the end of that, y'all was talking like pros, giving that feedback. So I really, again, appreciate y'all time with us this evening and sharing your really thoughtful feedback with the students, which I'm sure is going to contribute to their growth and leadership throughout their academic and professional careers. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'll let our guest leave for the students. I'm gonna keep y'all on for about 10 more minutes just to debrief today's presentations. But again, students, if y'all want to give any comments or thoughts to our guest before they hop off, feel free to come off mute or type it in the chat.
Just again, thank you for taking the time out of your day, especially at night on a Monday. Really, thank you. We appreciate all those comments, feedback, because we use this time to like explore and just find our like mediums and our style. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much also for the feedback. We are students, and I personally, whatever I do, I believe that everything looks great and perfect. but it's not true. There is somebody always have a better opinion, and feedbacks helps me to be a better student and prepare a better project for my other classes.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen and Hermelo, for sharing that. Any other comments, any other thoughts before our guests hop off?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to our guests for taking their time out of their day to evaluate, our final projects, and giving us feedback through the lens of your expertise on, how we could make either our designs better or what we can do next time to, better meet the needs of people in the community or the environment, our stakeholders. I really appreciate I really appreciate the feedback and guidance that you guys have given us today. And yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks once again to our guest. This has been a long semester. We would have not gotten through it without you, especially not tonight. So thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, until we meet again, we really appreciate y'all time this evening.
Thank you, guys. Good luck on your semester.
Thank you all. Thank you all for investing in your education and in your future, and good luck. Have fun. Don't give up. Christmas is almost here. So is New Year's. Bye.
Awesome. Y'all, we wrapping it up, y'all. We went through our presentations for this week. I did want to just spend a couple of minutes debriefing with y'all, just in case you all as classmates had any questions for each other. I wanted to make sure we prioritize feedback from our guests, but I definitely wanted to make space for anyone who had thoughts or comments that they wanted to share with each other. So feel free to come off mute, raise your hand, or any thoughts y'all have for your classmates that presented today.
I think Joshua's project was pretty cool. Like, I think that was the first time I saw like someone use like MS Paint for it, or just, like a different type of way of like illustrating perspective with like collages and stuff. So that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, my only concern is one of the presentations that I saw has collage and also title. I think it says narrative. It's not clear to me. I mean, it is clear when somebody explained that to me, but if I just go over myself and I see this image that has collage and narrative, honestly, I don't understand what is the narrative. So I think it would be good if we can write down at least few words right there to clarify what is the message, because yeah, the collage is beautiful, but what is the message? That's my only, probably my only concern.
Agreed with that. There was definitely opportunity in some of the presentations to add labels in short descriptions. You don't have to write long paragraphs or anything, but some type of indicator on what, your visual is communicating, right? That's easier to do on maps, right? When you're presenting a visual of a collage, there's an opportunity to provide a description on what your collage is communicating, the stakeholders it represents, right? So definitely be mindful of those opportunities. Thanks for highlighting that, Hermelo. Anybody else have thoughts that they want to share?
And please, everybody, as I said before, feedback really helps me to improve my work. So I'm not saying that my work is perfect. No, of course not. At least 20 people, 15 people see my work. Yes, I share my work with all of you. And I'm sure some of you have a different opinion, or something is not, maybe something that is missing. Please feel free to share that. I won't get angry. I would really appreciate that. I will learn much better. So in my other classes or next semester, I will definitely consider that. That's important, and I will do better.
Let's go to you, Ulysses. What are your thoughts on today's presentations? What were your key takeaways? You may be on mute, Ulysses, and I'm going to go to Jesus and then Ryan after that.
Yeah, is this just the my opinion on the presentations?
Yes.
So yeah, I truly appreciated the attention, some of the presentations, the attention to detail, and also their visual collages. I think they kind of like speak for themselves. Some of them are very dynamic and colorful in vision, and I think that kind of gave me a an understanding as to what they were trying to accomplish. And also some of my classmates also went through, the extent research of even history of California and some also even some of these trees that they were trying to plant. So but overall, yeah, it's been good. It's been a good semester being part of this class, and yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Jesus. We're gonna go to Ryan, and then I'm gonna go to Paige, and then Edgar.
I enjoyed the graphical analysis that some of the presentations had. And then, like you said, the collages were rather astounding and well put together.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Ryan. Let's go to you, Paige, and then Edgar.
I think it's really nice that, I think a lot of projects focused on environmental equity, but also the social equity, which has been like a great part of this class because like we just touch upon it in studio. We barely touch upon environmental equity as well. So it was really nice to kind of go more in depth on those topics and incorporate that. And it was nice to see that reflected in a lot of projects.
Agreed, Paige. Edgar, go ahead and bring us on home.
Hey, Ronnell, I was getting dinner prepped, so I didn't catch the exact question.
Your key takeaways from today's presentation, and your thoughts on your classmates, outcomes.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful just to watch everybody, present their stand and just kind of watch the accumulation of like everything that we've been able to learn and apply, seeing kind of how the field trips that we've gone on have impacted a lot of the way that we are able to see the work and the way that it's been applied. I know that as far as my presentation goes and the application that I put into it, a lot of it comes from, from a lot of the viewers and the speakers, and that what we presented as far as like looking at specific stakeholders. There's a lot to be taken away from this class. There's a lot of valuable information that you've given us. So I'm excited to present next week and show you guys what we've been working on. It's definitely been a new project and been a new experience all the way through. So it's all been a really good experience. Looking forward to continue to applying it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Edgar. A great way to end tonight's class. Just really reflecting on everything you all learned this semester. You all have done a dynamic job in different mediums presenting your learning outcomes through the research that we've done, the presentations y'all have prepared weekly from the readings, as well as these final presentations you all presented, not only in front of each other, but in front of some amazing community stakeholders. So congratulations to the folks that finished out their presentations. We're not done. Folks who presented today need to be here next week to support their classmates' presentations. And don't forget for the folks who have outstanding assignments to submit those. The goal is to have everything submitted by the 12th. If you need more time than that, you should be reaching out to me so that we can arrange what that can look like. But outside of that, congratulations for everyone who presented their presentations today. I'm looking forward to the presentations for next week. Definitely take notes from everything you learned today. I'm hoping that folks are incorporating what they learned in the projects that will be presented next week. That's the benefit of presenting right later, is you get to learn from folks that presented first. So again, congratulations to you all. I'm just super proud and humbled by the experience we've had together this semester and the way that you all are showing your learning outcomes from it. Thank y'all so much for tonight and for this whole semester. Again, if y'all have any questions, reach out. I'll stay on for a few minutes after for anyone that has questions tonight. But I'll see y'all next week.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you all. Thank you.
you.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Good night. Sleep well all.
Hey, Linda. I'm not sure if you had any questions.